The corridors of Whitehall were silent that night. Only the faint echo of dripping wax and the heavy drag of armored boots broke the stillness. Behind a set of velvet curtains, a king waited, swollen, diseased, and furious. A queen prayed on the other side of the door, knowing that entering that room could decide if she lived or died. Because in Tudor England, the royal bed wasn't a place of love. It was a stage for power, fear, and blood. You think you know about Henry's bedroom, right? The man with 6 wives and a reputation for chopping off heads. But the real horror of Henry's bedchamber was worse than any execution block. It was a gilded torture chamber disguised as a palace suite, a place where privacy didn't exist, where intimacy was an act of politics, and where one wrong breath could cost a woman her crown or her head. This is the part of history your textbooks skip. Because it's not romance. It's rot. It's control. It's horror wrapped in silk. And that is the true story of the horrifying bedroom rules of Henry, where marriage was politics, desire was duty, and survival was the only kind of love that ever existed. Let's step inside the chamber of the most dangerous husband in history. Because what happened behind those silk curtains makes 50 Shades of Grey look like a bedtime story. Rule 1: the wedding night must be proved. Every royal marriage began not with celebration, but inspection. Henry's wedding nights were public trials. When the bedroom door closed, the court didn't go to sleep, it listened. Servants stood just outside, straining for sounds that confirmed the king had done his duty. By morning, maids brought the bedsheets to the royal physicians like evidence from a crime scene. They looked for blood, proof that the marriage had been made true. If the sheets were clean, panic followed. The bride would be summoned, questioned, examined. Doctors, priests, and noble witnesses would inspect her body to determine whether she was intact. Imagine that humiliation, your private self turned into public property. Catherine of Aragon endured that ritual. So did Anne Boleyn. A stain on a sheet could secure a crown, a missing one could end a dynasty. And if no proof appeared, whispers of witchcraft, deception, or treason filled the halls. A queen's honor was measured not in virtue, but in biology. Historians record that even the sound of laughter near the royal bedchamber could start a scandal. Because in Henry's world, sex was state business, and failure was fatal. Rule 2: no refusal allowed. Once crowned, a queen had no right to say no. When the king summoned her to his bed, she obeyed, or she risked her life. Treason in Tudor England didn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes it looked like hesitation. Even when Henry's body had turned grotesque, when his legs were swollen with ulcers that oozed pus, when the stench of decay filled the room, his wives were expected to smile and submit. Physicians wrote of the rank odor that clung to the king. Chronic infection, obesity, and possibly untreated diabetes made his flesh rot while he still lived. Anne of Cleves was said to hold her breath during their encounters to keep from gagging. But refusal, unthinkable. Spies recorded how long a queen took to answer the royal summons. If she delayed, if she looked ill, if she seemed reluctant, notes went straight to the king's advisors. Her Grace appears cold toward His Majesty. A sentence like that could mean exile or worse. Modern psychologists would call it coercion. In Henry's court, it was law. Rule 3: bodies as evidence. Here, where the nightmare deepened. The king's performance or his failure was never his fault. If Henry couldn't consummate a marriage, the blame fell on the queen. Anne of Cleves learned this cruel truth. After one failed night, Henry announced she was so unpleasant she had bewitched him. He claimed her very touch had taken his manhood. Within months, the marriage was annulled. Catherine Howard met a worse fate. When Henry's passion cooled, he accused her of manipulating his desires through witchcraft. She was 19, he was 50, obese and dying. She lost her head before her 20th birthday. Royal physicians documented these intimate failures like accountants tracking debts. They examined the Queen's body for signs of magic. A mole, a birthmark, a scar, all could be twisted into proof of curses. Behind the velvet curtains, the Tudor court practiced a science of humiliation. The Queen's body was a ledger of loyalty, the King's pride, the only truth that mattered. Rule 4: guards at the door. Privacy, it didn't exist. Even in bed, the King was never alone. Guards stood at the chamber door each night, not for protection but surveillance. They listened, counted the minutes, reported the noises. Afterward, servants inspected the bedclothes. Ladies-in-waiting recorded how the Queen looked at breakfast, pale, flushed, smiling, or weeping. Everything was evidence. Some accounts even describe peepholes built into chamber walls, allowing trusted courtiers to witness the act of union for the sake of the crown. Whether those holes truly existed or were whispered exaggerations hardly matters. The fear was real. Because Henry's wives knew they were never unwatched. Every sigh, every silence, every breath could become testimony. Rule 5: pregnancy as duty. Love had nothing to do with it. A queen's worth was measured in wombs. Her only divine mission: produce a son. Physicians charted menstrual cycles on parchment like battle plans. They examined urine for color and scent, studied dreams for omens of conception. If no pregnancy followed, the investigations began. Catherine of Aragon suffered 6 pregnancies, 5 ended in tragedy. Each miscarriage brought colder glances from her husband. Anne Boleyn gave Henry a daughter, Elizabeth, but no surviving sons. She was accused of unnatural intercourse with the devil before being executed. Fertility potions replaced medicine. Queens were force-fed mixtures of crushed pearls, mercury, and herbs meant to heat the blood. Some of those concoctions were poisonous. Food was rationed and monitored: no cold fruits, no vinegar, no fish thought to chill the womb. Everything from diet to dress served one purpose: create a boy. Pleasure suspicious, pain expected, and failure meant death. Rule 6: the danger of falling out of favor. The royal bed could crown a woman or condemn her. Anne Boleyn once held Henry spellbound. Within 3 years, she was a ghost haunting the Tower of London. The same lips that whispered devotion now begged for mercy. Henry's paranoia turned affection into accusation. He believed his wives could bewitch him through touch, control his mind through intimacy. So he watched them through spies, servants, even their own families. Catherine Howard was summoned to Henry's bed, while secret inquiries already prepared her execution warrant. She smiled for a man who would soon sign her death. That's the horror, knowing the same bed, where you're forced to prove loyalty doubles as your waiting room for death. The king even used pillow talk as evidence. Private words, spoken in exhaustion or fear, were twisted into confessions of treason. The walls of the Tudor palace didn't just have ears, they had daggers. Rule 7: the stench of disease. By Henry's later years, the royal bedchamber stank of decay. The once handsome prince had become a swollen monster trapped in his own body. His legs were wrapped in bandages soaked with wine and herbs to mask the rot. Servants had to drain pus from his ulcers twice a day. Sometimes the wounds burst open during exertion, splattering the sheets. Yet the rituals continued. Perfumed cloths covered his sores. Scented candles burned to hide the smell of flesh. Queens were expected to endure it, to lie beside the king and pretend nothing was wrong. Catherine Parr, his final wife, used linen soaked in rose oil to survive the odor. She once wrote privately that His Majesty's temper grows more fearsome as his pain increases. She was right, a man in constant agony, wielding absolute power, is a danger to everyone near him. His weight surpassed 400 pounds. He needed mechanical pulleys to rise from bed. Special furniture was built so he could be hoisted into position. Yet the court still called him the Lion of England, a lion rotting from the inside. Rule 8: Fear of accusations. In Henry's world, rumor was death. Anne Boleyn's downfall began with whispers. A musician laughed too long in her presence. That laughter became proof of adultery. Under torture, the man confessed to crimes that never happened. Anne's own brother was executed on charges of incest. Gossip, not evidence, sealed their fate. Catherine Howard's teenage flirtations resurfaced years later as accusations of treason. Her old letters were treated as confessions. Even the women who served her were tortured for staying silent. Spies filled every corridor. Ladies-in-waiting were forced to report every sigh, every tear, every remark about the king's body. Silence was suspicious, honesty was suicidal. Modern historians compare Henry's court to a surveillance state centuries ahead of its time. It was politics through paranoia, monarchy through fear, a government ruled from the bed. Rule 9: The king's illness became law. By his final years, Henry's mind decayed along with his flesh. He suffered from chronic pain, insomnia, and rage fits so violent that servants feared to speak his name. Some historians suspect traumatic brain injury from a jousting accident in 1536. After that blow, his cruelty multiplied. He saw betrayal in shadows, plotted conspiracies where none existed, and rewrote laws to justify every impulse. The royal bedroom became his throne room, and the queens his prisoners. When Catherine Parr dared to argue theology, he signed her arrest warrant. Only sheer luck saved her. She found it before it was delivered and begged forgiveness in time. She survived barely. The others weren't so lucky. Rule 10: Death was the only escape. For Henry's wives, the end always came in the same form: silence. Divorce, exile, execution, it didn't matter. Their voices were erased. Catherine of Aragon died alone after 20 years of loyal service. Anne Boleyn's final words were prayers for the man who murdered her. Jane Seymour died, giving him the son he wanted. Anne of Cleves escaped only by accepting the title beloved sister and disappearing from court. Catherine Howard lost her head for being too young to understand the danger she was in. Catherine Parr outlived him, but not by much. Each one entered that bedchamber with hope. Each one left it marked by horror. So when you imagine Henry, not the painting, not the song, not the jolly king with a turkey leg, but the man behind the curtains, remember this: his bed was not a place of passion. It was a throne of fear. Every sheet stained with suspicion. Every whisper recorded in ink and blood. A monarch so obsessed with power that he turned love itself into a weapon.